Welcome to the January 17th, 1:30 p.m. City Council meeting. And at this time, we'll stand for pledge and prayer by Councilman Lawrence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we humbly come before you, Father, and Lord, we ask at this time, Father, you'd be with all those involved with this event at Phillips Petroleum, Father. Lord, that you would be with the families and those that are involved, Father. That, Lord, that you would lift them up, Father. Lord, that you would send a comforter to them, Father. And Lord, we ask that you just bless them, Father, with the peace that cannot be understood, Father. But Lord, that they would be able to just rest in the knowledge that you are who you say you are. And God, we pray, Lord, that you would give this council meeting today, Father, wisdom and insight, Father. Lord, your word says, Father, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask, and you will give to them, Father. So, Lord, we ask that you help us, Lord, to direct your vision for this council for such a time as this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. At this time, we will have questions and comments from any citizen that would like to speak. And I see none, so we'll move on to the city manager's monthly report.
So we'll touch base on our finances just a little bit. It'll be kind of a little quick. Everything's pretty much good. If you see, our revenue is still slightly above in the general fund our budget amounts, and still over our 5-year average. Revenues are below our budget amounts. Expenditures, are below our budget amounts so far, and pretty much right at our 5-year average. Remember, we have maintained the last 2 months, revenue over expenditures, but that will start to invert as we get all the taxes in. Our January payment will be January and February will be the last big collections for property tax, because after January 31st you start paying penalties. So it's a little slow right now. We've got about 60% of the sales tax collected, but we'll get a big chunk of that once ever, If you're like my grandmother always was, she never paid it early. She didn't like the government making interest on her money. She was going to keep it till the very last, so there's still a lot of those people out there that are going to pay it on the last little bit. So general fund's still looking good. Water and sewer, of course, we're still above our 5-year average on revenue, but the 5-year average a little kind of low because we've had so much increased water sales to the industrial partners the last 2 years. It's going to take a little while for the average to come up. But you'll notice this year that our revenue is a little closer to the budgeted amount since we've increased our budgeted revenue for that. And expenditures are right on track with our 5-year average. Revenues and expenditures are revenues over expenditures. And then, of course, that's pretty common in there because we have those big note payments later. Sales tax slightly above our budgeted amount. We're pretty much maintaining flat with our collections last year. But if you remember, we have about $7,000 a month coming out for that correction where they did an audit last year and overpaid us by about $180,000. So if you add that in, we're still seeing a slight sales tax increase. So we're still seeing strong sales tax collections. Hotel occupancy is still at or above our budget amounts and a little bit above our 5-year average. We anticipate that to increase as the complex has a small turnaround plan later this spring, and then of course later in the fall is when they're planning their big turnaround. So we should see better collections and see that increase a little bit there. Projects, we will be awarding a bid for our downtown revitalization grant project on Thursday. We'll be opening the bids. That's, if you remember, to tear down the building at 420 North Main and then to replace a good chunk of the sidewalk in the 700 block. So that should be, award of that bid should be on your next council agenda, so we'll start seeing that progress. The contractor on the sewer project's making progress. They've almost got all the sewer, the pipe laid, so then they'll go back to connecting manholes and then finally the service connections. So, weather and some sand kind of slowed down that process with a 3rd Street. As the council's aware, and this might be the first time I've mentioned it to the community, so don't, hopefully they'll be mindful, but the sewer line in the west alley of Main Street, crossing 3rd Street from about Jesse's Burrito just to the other side, we've replaced the line on both sides of the state highway over there, but we hadn't replaced the state highway. That has now started to collapse. So we've got that award on this agenda as an emergency item. And so 3rd Street will be closed again for a period of time when we get over there to that. So we're working on that. As I've continued to say several times, I still do not have an update from TxDOT on when the control systems will be in for the light at Wilson and Roosevelt. I know that HTO is opened, you know, this has been on order for over a year. Like I said, it is region-wide. If you're ever in Pampa, the stoplight at Hobart and 60 has been up waiting controls for longer than ours has. But I did tell someone, they're like, oh, I didn't know it had a computer chip in it. Well, I mean, something's got to tell it
Yeah.
when to change and how to recognize the cars, but we do hope that that'll be in by the end of the quarter, so I think we're at least on the downhill side of that, so we're getting close to that. TxDOT has accepted our plans for the 10th Street reconstruction, our plans and traffic controls, so that will be going out to bid early in February, so we'll be looking at a bid award in March for probably an April start date on that. We did get our playground equipment for Huber Park ordered. That was part of the downtown, or the Texas Park and Wildlife grant. That's actually about 3 weeks out.
Wow, very good.
So we only ordered that 2 weeks ago. I was expecting,
Months.
yeah. So apparently, the one thing we can get is play equipment.
And have they started on that fence? I think they
Yes,
started
yeah,
the
so we've,
poles anyway.
well, they've changed tactics.
Put some speed bumps.
Because they went out there and laid it out, and then everywhere they drilled, apparently they hit a lateral to the sprinkler system.
Oh, dear.
And so that slowed down getting the fence post in a little bit, so they're kind of having to relay out that. But the fence is going there up along Franklin,
Okay.
and then they have added the speed bumps into the parking lot.
Yes.
We're trying to figure out, there's a little bit of debate between the city and Excel right now on who owns the parking lot lights for that parking lot. So what we might end up doing is, we had ordered 5 solar-powered lights for the nature trail. Those might end up going to Huber Park to light that parking lot,
That'll be good.
which will, I think, help some of that as well. We did start replacing some of the lights and some of the stuff around the bathrooms there at Huber Park. So we've got some more parts on that to kind of get that spruced up a little bit for the spring and summer season too.
And
But
that bathroom is actually on our 5-year plan, right? To be redone?
well, we found that luckily, I guess that company knows that they set those in high use areas, so they haven't changed anything. So we can get doors, we can get windows, we can get skylights.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to be able to pretty much replace everything in there without having to physically replace the building. The building itself's in pretty decent shape. It's, it's cinder block. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
so we'll work on, kind of refreshing the light fixtures and the getting doors. I think if we get the magnetic timed lock back working, and like I said, I think people forget how long that's been there.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's there, but it'll be nice. We'll get that fixed up, and like I said, the new play equipment should be installed in time for the nice weather. So there's giving Public Works a little heads up on that. So that will be, an inclusive play set. So it's got all those different things. It's got the swings for, with the harnesses to help keep kids in that can't, normally stay in a normal swing. And we've got areas that are wheelchair accessible, and it will have that entire pour in place, so it'll be easily accessible and safe for that. So I'm excited to see that. So we do have that ordered. So that's most of the projects. We'll go through the departments now. Plan development, we have been working with the right-of-way crew to get them trained on demolition. So they did get their first building back demolished. We did get we went to a fifth wheel trailer to try to help some of our CDL issues with that. So that seemed to work pretty well. If you've noticed, they've started to get the dirt work for the tidal wave car wash, which is going next to Hampton Inn. So we've been working on that. They've also issued a permit again for an extension at the High Plains Veterinary Hospital that's going to be for their veterinary internship program, which is part of their cooperation with the Texas Tech Veterinary School. So they're going to put in some areas for their vet interns to kind of live and kind of like little apartments, so that when they're working there with the vet, they'll have a place to be.
Is that going to be there
At the High Plains, yeah.
At the place? I didn't know there was any room really there, but,
Not much, of course, I guess,
yeah.
a college kid, well,
Yeah, okay.
makes me sound older when I call them college kids. I don't think they need a whole lot of space for just the days that they'll be rotating in there, but that'll be nice, and we're excited to, get some of that money and recognition working with Texas Tech. We're excited for High Plains Veterinary Hospital on that. And then, of course, P&D's still been very busy with all the roofing and contractors getting caught up from our hailstorm earlier last year. HR, we finally finished open enrollment, so everybody's on their new insurance plans, and that's, I know that Michelle Gray, that's Michelle Gray. Michelle Crump, I was about to make a joke about how many Michelles we have, and I caught myself up before I could make my joke, so I guess I'm the one that looks bad. But she's definitely glad that that's over, so we'll be processing a couple of new hires that are coming on, and she's also completed our vacation rollover process since we're in the new year. Police department's also been busy. We've got a new certified officer on staff that Trent came over, actually from Dumas. He grew up in Borger, so he's kind of coming back to where he's from, so they're excited to have that. They recently got a grant and will be sponsoring 2 alert trainings in March. That's the school shooter, active shooter training. So they've got 2 sessions of that paid for by a grant. All of our officers will be going through it, and then it was opened up to the region, and those 2 classes are completely full and sold out now, so that's a good thing. Over the New Year's holiday, we also got to implement the first IDM STEP grant, so you might have seen a few more officers out that were paid by the TechStock grant for that. And Lieutenant Morris has finished the application for our comprehensive STEP grant program, so that will staff up to $15,000 of overtime throughout the year if approved for extra traffic enforcement. So that'll help with that visibility, and we're excited to see that come. Also, Police Department wanted to give a shout out to Wes at the Vehicle Service Center. So, we have 2 of the new model Tahoes that came in a year after we ordered them, and we've got 5 more on order if they ever get in. Well, they're so new that they switched brake types, and apparently the brakes have been very hard to get and can't find them around here. Well, Wes, I think, being Wes and determined as he is, scours the whole country and found a vendor that had some in stock at about a 30% discount, and so we now have 6 sets of brakes stored up in case we ever go through those. Hopefully, once that, and that's, that those Tahoes changed in 2020, about the time all of that hit, so. In animal control, our newest animal control officer has passed his basic animal control test, so he's fully operational now, and then they've been also busy replacing a water damaged wall, so they've done a good job on that, saving the city a little money down there, and they're working on getting some new flooring installed down at the animal shelter now. Fire department, so they completed CPR training for the city and county at the Dome earlier last week, so they had 14 people attend that. We've also hired 2 more certified firefighters who have their EMR, their emergency medical responder. That's the lowest level, so they'll be able to work on the truck while they work on their EMT basic. So those have started. And then with the retirement of Gabe Rivera and Stacy Nolan, we promoted 2 captains, Justin Williams and Justin Hart, to the new fire captains. And then we promoted 2 lieutenants, which are Jeremiah Wiley and Caleb Rawlinson. So they've had some personnel changes over there. In the finance department, of course, the auditor was here the week of the 3rd, the first week of the year. So we've got our exit interview from that. He'll be back the week of the 30th to finish up the 2021 audit, start on the 2022 audit. For the most part, we're in pretty good shape. We've got some changes coming to our purchase card policies and stuff based on some of his feedback, which I had kind of started. I think we talked about that. I'd kind of started that process anyway. We also got the 4th quarter investment summary on the council agenda. If you'll see our interest revenues increased a lot. Since interest rates have gone up, might be bad if you're buying a house, but so far for the city, it's pretty good. When we do our mid-year budget review, we'll probably amend those line items because we've already collected pretty much our yearly amount that we budgeted for interest revenue in both the general fund and water sewer fund. So we're good to see that. They've also been working finance with the EDC, working through some of our little final procedural issues on how to get them get our processes handled with that. And so I think we're getting really close to having that behind us. And then maybe Amy and Michelle will stop sending me emails. But I doubt it, but I'm easy and nice, so I guess it works for them. And then we're working on our dispatch agreements, getting those updated to start the billing process for the current year in finance. In Public Works, like I said, they're working on the updating the bathrooms and those issues at Heber Park that we talked about, the speed bumps and the fence. We've also done some work on the new downtown parking lot. It had both a photoluminescent eye and a timer that had to work in conjunction for those lights to come on. So I know I don't know, I've kind of seen it, they're kind of on or off. So we have paid just to take the timer out so that it's just on, dusted on now based on the photo cell. So that seems to be working a little better there on that. Of course, Public Works helped with the stock show pretty good, getting that all set up.
Yeah.
I think it turned out pretty nice in the dome. I was quite pleased with how all that worked out, and it's
That's great.
one of the fanciest looking stock shows I've ever seen, so.
You heard that really well.
Yeah, well, I haven't been to the dome yet. Of course, luckily, and like I said, we talked a little bit about that, because the acoustics, depending on what of course, with all the animals and the sand and everything in the dome, I thought the acoustics weren't bad at all in there, but part of the reason that the acoustics can be a little hot still is that insulated panel, we have a vinyl coating on it. So it's not necessarily acoustic, because acoustic panels, yes, they absorb sound, but they also absorb other things. And so we did that knowing that the stock show was one of our key events that we needed to keep in there. So there shouldn't have been much in there for the scent or anything to stick to.
Yeah.
And then the HVAC engineer made sure that, that place moves a lot of air. If you turn the fans on those blowers, even if the heater or the cold isn't on, it sucks in a lot of fresh air. So I think they were all very happy. We got lots of positive feedback. I think everybody that I ran into, everybody that Stroke ran into in there was very pleased with the facility. I know the buyer's dinner was quite well received in the ballroom, and so we're excited with that. I did add that summary to your packet, or your update email. We averaged about 1.5 events a week in our partial year open, and generated a little over almost $40,000 in revenue
Yeah, it was nice.
in that partial year. We already have events booked out till October. So it's definitely, I knew it would be used, but I don't think I knew that it would be used to that level. So that's definitely a win-win for everybody there. But it's all cleaned up and the dome's ready for, I guess, the Latino concert is the next big event in the dome. So that's coming up. So it's I don't know, it's really cool for me to see the different types of events that are going into the dome. And, we did try to, design that as a multi-use kind of area, but I don't think any of us were really sure how it, might work out. But now we've had the grappling tournament with the octagon that looked super cool in there. The stock show looked super cool in there. And so now we're going to see how it is, full of a bunch of people with loud music.
Yeah.
But it's definitely being received well. Manny and Isaac at the youth center have completed their annual NASCO training so that they can be prepared to train all the lifeguards for that season coming up. They're getting ready also to go to TRAPS, which is the Texas Recreation and Park Society annual conference, so I'll be interested to see what ideas they come back. They also, this last weekend, had a pickleball tournament. So they had a pretty good turnout for that, so I think we might start doing some more of that. And, we do have at Huber Park when we take out all the play equipment, you got 2 play sets at Huber Park. You got the big one, and then right across the sidewalk, you got the little one.
Yeah.
I think our plans are when we take all that out to turn that little area into to a pickleball court there at Huber Park. So that's pickleball's a cross between tennis, badminton, and ping pong ball, or ping pong. So
I have to go buy me a mat.
it's the new thing. It's kind of uses a wiffle ball, so it's a little slower pace than a little easier on people than tennis, apparently. But it's.
Get her the
I
challenge
haven't
of the
tried it
American
yet.
Pampa in the game.
Well, in the fire marshal's office, a little bit on the nose, but they finished up training for a mass casualty workshop that's going to be at the Dome this Thursday. So after today's incident, I'm sure we'll be able to bring in some real world experience and learning from that. But we're excited. We have 173 participants registered from all over the region. Going to be here at the Dome Thursday for that. They've also got a trauma-informed class coming up February 23rd and 24th at the Dome. And it's about time to be sending out our Project Shield letters again, which is, our little donation scheme for fire prevention and all of that stuff. So that's funded a lot more education and little items for kids and stuff like that as they go through Edith and all of that stuff. So Fire Marshal's office definitely been busy. Utilities. Well, we finally got our test wells to get drilled again. And we hit water.
Oh, thank you.
Just not enough water. So apparently we're on the edge of it. So we're gonna have to drill some more test wells to try to get in an area that will produce the amount of water we need. Chris had talked to the adjacent landowner, and at one point they drilled 90 test wells to get 2 wells.
Wow.
Pretty much we have a narrow stream that kind of runs through there, so we're trying to hit where that groundwater stream is. I think because it's a stream, that's also why we get pretty good water production for it. So, our water wells up there are producing, 2 to 3 gallons, 2 to 3,000 gallons per minute, which are very good volume wells. So it'll be worth it when we find the water, but we're still working on finding the water. Our vac truck that we ordered has got a tentative delivery date of July 20th. So that one is progressing. We still don't know where our pothole patcher is. And in Public Works also, we pre-ordered a transfer tractor for the transfer station, a new semi. We're having a hard time getting them to even confirm an order on that, so don't be surprised if we don't try to find a different vendor in the next council meeting or two to try to get something coming. He says the allocation's already taken up, but he keeps calling with other in-stock trucks elsewhere, so we kind of think that we might not be getting a fair shake on that, so don't be surprised. We did that with the trash truck a year or two ago when we kind of got into that same situation, so don't be surprised about that. Also, I've had some questions. 10th Street at Sterling where the road is closed, that's a gas project. And so I was, that has nothing to do with the city, and I'm not for sure what's going on there, and they actually didn't inform us that they were closing the street before they closed the street. So if anybody has any issues with that, that's Texas Gas Service, not the city. Public engagement's also been pretty busy here lately. We're finalizing Boomtoberfest, which will be our big community event come October, trying to finalize the headliners and work through some of that. Our new website update has gone live. We're still working on fine tuning some of that, but I think if you get out there, it looks way better. Deidre's also working on some business marketing to help our local businesses, especially tying them together with the Go Texan certified program. So things that are made here in Borger, like All's Brewing or the Little Leather Shack, those can be certified as Go Texan and get some of the free brochure, free marketing from the Go Texan program.
Oh, that's great.
So we're working on that. She's also been learning to be skeptical of Wikipedia, as she's been trying to find a way to upload new pictures on our Wikipedia page so that we're not judged by the 1980s old picture that is on our Wikipedia page. Apparently that's easier said than done. We're also getting some initial setups for our, what we're going to do is start doing a podcast series about city and city operations. So don't be surprised if in the coming months y'all don't get asked to be a part of that at some point. So you can be hip and cool and modern as you participate in a podcast. We also did put out a community survey here this week, so if anybody hasn't seen that yet on what type of community events you'd like to see, that is one of the council's strategic priorities and one of the feedback we get from the community more to do. So we're trying to get some feedback to help make sure of that. We finally did get our approval from the Apple development side which is the first step in pushing out the city's app that we've been working on. So we will have a City of Borger app here shortly, which will have all of the events and give us a better way to outreach with our community. Like I think I said last week, about 68% of our website visitors are using a mobile device. And so, of course, an app is a lot easier to format and interact with on a mobile device than just a web page. So we're excited to see that come through. Also, if you were not aware, Borger is actually on the butterfly migratory path. And because we are on the butterfly migratory path, we are eligible for a TechStop program to get free wildflower seeds to be distributed into our right-of-ways.
Wow, that's great.
So Deidre's gonna, if you see her out there on the side of the road with a reflective vest growing things. It's But so we will try to see if we can't get some of those out there and replace some of our weeds with wildflowers, and
That'd be cool.
I think that's kind
I'll
of a,
throw with you.
I will too.
so yeah, she won't be littering. We'll make sure that she puts a Facebook post out there so we don't get the police department called on her as she's throwing wildflower seeds. But we've also, learned the TxDOT has a certified vegetative specialists. So, the right-of-ways there's quite a lot of science apparently into the right-of-ways. So, But I think it'll look good, if you drive between Borger and Panhandle, during that initial season, if you got the right rain, I mean, and all those hills are just covered in those yellow wildflowers. And my grandmother, I still hear the stories when she first got here in Phillips, and the new wives clubs went around to explore the 128 different types of wildflowers that are home to the Borger area. So there's a lot of history with that, so we're excited to see that as we work through those beautification efforts. So, OEM, IT, and all of that weird stuff, they're working on some GIS updated maps. Of course, they've been reallocated today. But I will say that I think the response and the communications for today's incident went really well. So it's nice seeing some of the proactive steps that we've taken into place go. The Everbridge notifications went out really well. The D4H was keeping everybody up to date. The new radio system, everybody that was on the new radio system, I don't think had a single problem communicating. And we were able to patch some of the incoming units that were coming in to make sure that everybody had a way to get past. So I'm really proud of how all that worked, and really how everybody worked together. We did have a very good regional response in a pretty quick order to that, both with the complex partners and Borger Fire and the regional EMS providers, both, Stinnett, AMR, Gray County. So that was good to see everybody's quick response there. The state's got their PIO here. The state DDC was in the EOC, and the two Jasons did a good job with that. We are getting our radar module shipped back. If you remember, we did sign that agreement with Pantex for them to refurbish our radar and turn for use. So that should be coming back and installed here within the next couple of weeks, just in time for hopefully our spring severe weather season. And so we're excited for that. They also completed a tabletop exercise with Nutrien, and are setting up some tours for the new firefighters to acclimate to the Nutrien facility. The Texas Water Development Board has been tasked with a regional stormwater plan and flood plan. A lot of that's driven by hurricanes and all those issues they're having out in the south, but it's developed statewide. And part of that is to identify regional projects for funding. So as part of that, we did get our FEMA grant for the master drainage plan that's maybe a month or two away from finally being completed. And so we've gotten our engineers with the state contractor for that. They were quite excited with the work that we're doing, so we're ahead of most other communities. And because of that, in this region, outside of Borger, there are 7 identified projects for possible grant funding. We're going to be able to submit 41. And so because of that, I do expect some of those projects identified in the master drainage plan to be grant funded for completion here, relatively soon with that first round of funding through the Texas Water Development Board. So that's
great.
some exciting development there. We've got 2 new dispatchers hired and dispatched, which is coming along, and we're working on improving and updating our ProQA scoring as we work to work through that. IT's been working on our new phone system. So if you remember, we did a budget amendment last year to get that going. So right now, our tentative go-live date with that is February 11th. That's kind of been one of the final steps we've been waiting on to really push out the Citizen Services Specialist, Linda's new position. So when we get all that done, anything you need, you can just call 0900, and we'll take care of the routing with that. So we've simplified things, and our goal there is to make sure that we're doing away with a lot of voicemail boxes for areas that don't, I don't want people, if a field supervisor is never in his office, you should not be able to leave a voicemail for them thinking that they're going to be able to get back to you. I don't want calls just to think something's going to happen and not happen. So utility billing, those are all going to go away. So we're going to replace them and route them to where your call will eventually route to somebody that will answer the phone or somebody that will check their messages.
That's great.
In certain areas, we're going to go away from that altogether. Like utility billing will have for lack of a better term, like a call center type system where after 5 rings, if they don't pick up, it'll put you on hold. Give you a message, we're sorry that we weren't unable to take your call. You're number 1 in the queue. And so as the clerk's helping somebody else, her phone will let her know somebody else is waiting. And then once she handles that customer, he or she, they can pick up the next customer. And so that way, the citizen gets to decide whether they want to wait based on how far in line or whether they want to call back. I don't want the phones just ringing and ringing and ringing. So we're excited to see that February 11th-ish, depending on how the final configuration goes.
That's great.
So that's the city's work in the last month. Any questions?
Sounds good. Any questions?
That's a lot of info.
Then we will move on to the consent agenda, items 6 through 9. if there's any questions or comments. And if not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve consent items 6 through 9.
Second.
And all in favor? And they pass. And we'll move on to item 10, conduct a public hearing and then take appropriate action to approve on final reading ordinance O-001-23, adopting a change to the future land use map. Mr. Spradlin.
So we talked about this last meeting, this is just allowing a change in area over there by the high school to corridor mixed use in the future land use so that we can request a zoning change for a business that's looking at utilizing one of those lots. The previous use had been in violation of zoning ordinance. And so, a good chunk of that area is mixed use commercial already anyway. And I would just remind everybody, that the change in the future land use map does not change zoning. It just allows a zoning request to be made to change to that zoning, and then we would still have to go through the appropriate notification of neighbors and the radius and all of that stuff. So I'll entertain any other questions before you have the public hearing, if you have any.
And if there's no questions, then we will go ahead and conduct a public hearing. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, and I see none, so we'll close the public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve on final reading ordinance O-001-23, adopting a change to the future land use map.
Second.
All in favor? And it passes. And moving on to item 11, consider and take appropriate action on resolution R-001-23, authorizing Borger Inc.'s purchase of an approximately 30.710 acre tract out of the southeast quarter, section number 24, block Y, AB survey, Hutchinson County, Texas. Ms.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
And so this property is, we've kind of named it in-house as the Joy Rush property. So the purpose of it is so that we could develop it into a rail serve property to give more options for industries wanting to come in here and hopefully remove some barriers. So that's the plan for it as it is right now. But, we're always open to change, so we want to innovate to whatever. But this property will be a big asset in things that we can offer, hopefully existing people or people wanting to expand here.
Any questions or?
Katie got us on some list as rail ready something. Can you
Yes.
speak to that briefly?
So Omnitracks, they go far in helping us prepare sites, but also, I've been in contact with them last month because we got a RFI from them. So a company looking to expand to this area. And so we couldn't quite meet all their requirements, but we get inquiries from them, as well as they'll help us with the preparation of this property, and then it'll go on their list. So when people start looking for properties, they can say, hey, we've got this in Hutchinson County and Borger that meets your needs.
Yeah, so we've got a few steps ahead of
We
the
have-
competitors.
We have a few, yes, and so the goal is for us to eliminate all the obstacles of why you would not want to come to Borger.
That's great.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say, this started about a year ago or more with Katie. It's in a state that's got a lot of people, so it's been going around. So this was after the business park, we got some interest in that. The enterprise park doesn't have access to rail, and so that can be a limiting factor. You might remember, we did have a prospect inquire about this lot for needing rail served. We haven't heard back from that, but and Amy's a little new, but one of the biggest things that we have when we deal with prospects, and this is why I think so many EDCs own property, is because if they can control it, they take out that unknown.
I know, thank you.
And so it's easier for the EDC to own the property than to try to broker a deal with a third-party landowner. And I think you're seeing that some with the business park now, enterprise park now that it's out there, and it's been a plus, so.
And as Garrett said about the one that we had an inquiry on, that deal's not done. We just haven't heard yet because it's a company that they want rail service, and since we're adjacent, it makes it a really good property. They had requirements like they wanted it to be rectangle And it's pretty much as rectangular property as you could get.
Borger especially.
Yes. So, and it was another energy, like a green energy company. And so it just gives us another offering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. If there's no other comments or questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve Resolution R-001-23, authorizing Borger Inc.'s purchase of an approximately 30.710 acre tract out of the southeast quarter, section number 24, block Y, AB survey, Hutchinson County, Texas.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And it passes. And item 12, consider and take appropriate action to consider and approve a contract with Bo Simon, Inc. for the emergency replacement of a failed sewer line in the 100 block of West 3rd Street in the amount of $142,500. Mr. Spradlin.
So as we kind of alluded to earlier, and the city now for about 3 years has been working through replacing our concrete sewer lines. And for the third year in a row, y'all are gonna have to award an emergency bid to add on to a project because the next project didn't survive the completion of the first project. So like we said, this one's still at least pretty early. It's not requiring vacuuming, but we have started to see it collapse under the highway, which has created a little sinkhole over there in the area by the manhole where the lane is already closed. So since we've got the contractor there, we thought we'd go ahead and replace this last little bit. Bo Simon has used pretty much his same quantity unit prices for this. This one should be a little easier. It's not as deep, because you're on the downhill slope with the terrain then, so the sewer is only about 12 foot deep there instead of the 16 feet deep where they're working now. And so the price came in at $142,500. If you recall, the current contract for 4th Street to 1st Street that they're working on is a little under $900,000.
Yeah.
So it's about a 15% increase just to do that little spot. I think the price is reasonable. We've been having really good luck with that contractor. Like I said, he's not messing around, and they're doing good luck with it. So I'm not for sure we have much of a choice. On the bright side, we're down to only 3 other identified projects that remain with concrete sewer line in our CIP plan. So we're
Well, he's already mobilized, so we're saving all those costs, so.
Anyone else have anything? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to declare the replacement of the sewer line under 3rd Street as an emergency need and award a bid to Bo Simon Incorporated in the amount of $142,500 and authorize the city manager to execute any and all documents to authorize the project.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And item 13, consider and take appropriate action to introduce on first reading ordinance O-002-23, amending the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. Mr. Spradlin.
So as I know the council is aware, we're considering options for the provision of emergency medical services in the community. So we've talked about it extensively over the last month or so. Also with that, this item is going to start some of the official decision-making, as you get options. So I wanted to put together a little presentation since this will kind of be the first time in an official, general, regular council meeting so that the community can kind of see what's going on. And I know there's been all sorts of news coverage of this throughout, so I don't know that people are necessarily surprised or not, but just a quick history of EMS in Borger. And as we go through this, for the most part, this impacts Fritch and the county as well, but when I talk about some of this, we're looking at Borger right now and not the other regional partners. So, back in the early days, your funeral home was your ambulance because they had the vans and the cots to transport people dead or alive. So pretty much the goal was, to get you to the hospital, because back then doctors thought you needed to be in a hospital to be treated and you couldn't get treatment in the field. So that worked fine. So after that, they finally started kind of trying to change that a little bit. And so the Borger Fire Department took over the first official and started operating the first official emergency medical service in the city of Borger. If you see, there's some, go to the fire department, you can see those old station wagons that they, you put a light on a station wagon and a little latch that'll lock onto the cot, and then you have an ambulance. So they did that for many years. Then then came around the invention or the development of a paramedic. And so with the thinking back in the 80s at the time, I think there started to be some concern with, oh my God, we're going to let firemen stick people. And so at that point, with the billing and some of the other issues with that, the city and the county decided to contract with Rural Metro to provide ambulance service. And at that point, the city and the county did subsidize Rural Metro for that service. And so a subsidy is not, when we talk about that, a subsidy is not unusual or uncommon, and we did used to do that. At the time, Rural Metro provided service for Borger, Hutchinson County, Gray County, and Pampa. So they kind of had a little regional office, somewhat how AMR is positioned now with the contract in Amarillo. In that time period when Rural Metro was working, the hospital closed, and the solution to reopening the hospital was the creation of the hospital district. So once the voters approved the hospital district and the new tax rate to fund the hospital district took over that subsidy amount. But Rural Metro continued to provide service to us. During that time, Pampa and Gray County switched providers, and they went to the Trauma Foundation of Texas, which was started by a trauma doctor out of Pampa. And so when Rural Metro lost that contract, of course, they lost some of the cost sharing by having the operations in Borger and Pampa, so the subsidy amount significantly increased, which is when the hospital district decided to operate their own ambulance service in place of paying that subsidy to Rural Metro. So for about 8 years, the hospital district operated the ambulance service. At that point, it was starting to be financially non-feasible for the hospital district to operate that service, in addition to covering the indigent care costs that the hospital district is responsible for. So at that point, that's when AMR came in. And so that was about in 2018 when AMR started providing service. AMR was initially able to operate profitably, and then of course over the last couple of years, and inflation and things have happened, that's changed just a little bit. So AMR now has requested an annual subsidy of $675,627 to continue servicing Borger, Fritch, and the unincorporated areas of Hutchinson County, south of the Canadian River. Like I said, subsidies are not uncommon. It is very, especially in communities our size, it is unusual for there not to be a subsidy, or for some operator to not to operate at a loss. So either most cities are subsidizing or they're operating at a loss. So I don't think that the request is uncommon. So what you see with that is right now the subsidy would allow AMR to continue operations as currently existing, which is one ambulance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and one ambulance 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, plus emergency needs through their operation in Amarillo. So they that based on how we would possibly split up that subsidy, because that subsidy request is for it's not just the city of Borger, it's not just Fritch, it's not just Hutchinson County. So you can see that if we used our current dispatch split, the city of Borger at about 60% of the calls would be responsible for $405,000 of that. Hutchinson County would be responsible for about 30% of that, or $202,000 of that. And city of Fritch would be responsible for about $67,000 of that. So when this started, we also wanted to, I know how the council is, and the council doesn't like having just one option, so we did start exploring the possibility of bringing the operations in-house and operating an ambulance service through the Borger Fire Department. That's the next most common way of doing this. We have 26 firefighters right now that are also certified as EMT basics, so there is a little bit of staff efficiencies that we can put into place. AMR operates their service with 14 full-time employees. Based on our operational assessment, we can do it with 10 additional employees. That would be 1 EMS coordinator, 6 paramedics, and 3 EMT basics or EMT advanced, depending on how that would lay out. So because we can reduce some of that staffing, that would allow 3 of our current firefighters to be assigned to 1 of the ambulances on a rotating shift basis. So, at some point, all of the firemen will take a shift on the ambulance to get that in. I did have Mike and Jamie planned on being here to kind of cover a little bit of that, but, as happens in the emergency response, something happened, but I'll answer any questions as we go through this. So based on that model, our projected expenses with a capital payment for the initial upfront investment would be $1,205,000 a year. So that includes salaries and benefits at the city's benefit levels, and salaries matching the AMR current hourly rates that they've been listed for their current positions.
And
So,
it includes insurance,
yeah,
is
this,
that
this,
under the,
right, so the insurance would just be, EMS insurance is a rider to our additional insurance right now, and so that quote from TML IRP is in here. You know, there are lots of cities that provide EMS service and that use TML IRP, so it was not
okay.
a big surprise, so they have a method for that, so that's all factored into our cost projections. And then, so when you look at the operating analysis of how this would impact city operations, if we took it, there are two revenue variables here, the low end based on a 25% collection rate, the AMR average, which is based on their average collection rate, and then a high end revenue model with a high end of 40% collection rate. So that's generally what we found, anywhere between those. So I'm giving you the full range of what that would look like. So on the low end, the operating loss for the service would be $470,720 a year. Following the AMR average, it'd be $113,500 a year. And on the high end collection, it would be a $30,152 loss. If we worked out a cost share agreement, which and we'll talk about this in a minute, I've sent out some draft interlocal agreements just to kind of show people what it looked like. This is the possible cost spread across all the agencies at the dispatch, at how we break up dispatch calls. And I've run the numbers, the dispatch breakdown is close to the EMS breakdown. I mean, it's within a percentage or two, so not significant. So this kind of gives you an idea of that cost impact to the city based on these operations and to the other agencies. When you look at operational impact, so AMR retains the current service level with our, what I call 1.5 ambulances. That's the 1 24-hour ambulance, the 12-hour ambulance. Of course, they would then retain liability and billing responsibilities. With AMR, you would attain access to additional AMR personnel and equipment based on the needs and availability in the region, and it would provide a fixed budget amount. So we'd be able to budget for that fixed amount. Should the Borger Fire Department do it, of course, then we are investing in assets that hit
That
our.
would be a fixed amount for 1 year.
Right. Well, the contract, I mean, each
Well,
year
yeah,
we would
that's
know what
true.
the amount
Yeah,
is.
that's true. It
So
would just go up.
Just like us, amounts change, you know, their salaries are gonna change, our salaries are gonna
Yeah, that
change.
makes sense.
You know, so it changes yearly, but you would be able to budget
Yeah, that's true.
a fixed amount.
Makes sense.
If the fire department were to take it over, of course, we get to invest some of that money into assets, because at that point, we'll own part of the equipment and the vehicles and stuff like that. There would be a little more local control. You know, that's one of the things of operating something, not saying that we necessarily want that or it's good or bad either way. It would generate a variable budget amount. We do not know what revenue will be. I've given you I'm pretty certain it's going to fall within that range. We would continue to retain mutual aid agreements, you know, in the region like we do with everything else, like what happened today or in anything like that. There would be some cross-training benefits having it within the fire department. This model staffs 2 ambulances 24/7. And then we would, of course, work to transition as many current AMR employees as possible through this process. When we look at what we've done regionally right now is we've had discussions with Hutchinson County, the City of Fridge, and the Hutchinson County Hospital District. After all those discussions, all have unofficially indicated BFD is the preferred option. I have sent draft interlocal agreements for cost share to those agencies, which would be the next step. And then we have worked out a monthly subsidy of $68,435.74 with AMR to continue service on a monthly basis until the transition can happen. Right now, we would tentatively be planning that transition May 14th. Of course, I can't give we have to make a decision on which way we're going to go before I can start fine tuning. So we're still kind of in that, but that's what we're looking at. So what this budget adjustment does, this would be the city's first initial act. Should you adopt this budget, the city is going to go down the path of taking over EMS, at least for the city of Borger. Now, I will say that once we do that, the other agencies will need to cooperate with us, because the cost then to have a second service to provide to them is exponentially increased. Right. But the majority of calls and the majority of citizens are within the city of Borger, which is you know, what this council's responsible for providing public safety for. So if you approve this, we're gonna proceed down that way regardless of what the other entities do. But like I said, they have all indicated that, and I've gotten decent positive feedback, but you know, it takes time to get the elected bodies together. So this budget adjustment would transfer $1 million from the general fund reserves to the equipment fund for the purchase of the upfront capital equipment. So with that transfer, the general fund would retain $925,000 above our 28% required reserve amount. So we're able to do that. Of course, it would delay, you know, we talked in a work session about other projects like
Yes.
command van, a mobile stage, and so depending on how this works out, that might delay or cause us to reschedule some of that, but the funding is there. This amendment adds $394,000 in estimated revenue and EMS billing from May. It's really not from May. I'm taking a month behind, so it's from June 14th through September 30th is what that revenue is based on, because you know, they're not going to give you a credit card or cash payment when you put them in the back of the truck.
And is that at the low, did you figure that?
That's at the
low?
average.
Oh, at the average, okay.
And then it adds $602,860 in estimated expenditures for the remainder of 2023. Expenditures are a little artificially higher for the partial year because we're going to have to start incurring expense before we have revenue to offset that. And so that leaves a projected operating loss in fiscal 2023 of $208,000.
I've got a question for you. You said it was, for the contract with AMR would be through June?
It's month to month.
Okay, so it is possible to
Yes.
extend it if we get snagged up with something, so we
Right.
will still have coverage.
Their monthly contract's been factored in it's higher than an annual contract because, you know,
Right.
it needs to be because they don't have any, you know,
Yeah, they've got no guarantee either.
so, but it's at a price that they can go month to month and be acceptable in helping us out. And I will say that AMR has been forthright and open from the beginning, and we're working.
And is that monthly, is that falling on all three entities?
I can't speak 100% to that yet.
Okay.
The indication is that the county is intending on possibly using their ARP funding to pay that monthly stipend for everybody as part of their initial contribution. I have provided them an interlocal agreement in which they would use that funding to purchase the capital equipment up front as well, and then we would credit their share of any operating loss against that upfront payment,
Okay.
which would prevent us from using the reserves for that. But those are, like I said, at some point, somebody's got to take some official action to get them.
Yeah, okay. I see what
Yeah,
you're
so the county, you sent them documents going both ways.
Yes.
To look at that are,
They have a draft interlocal agreement on what we would expect if we outlaid the capital to get started, which includes a capital equipment fund payment, like we do with all of our departments for all that capital outlay. And then they have for what it would look like if they provided the capital funding, the initial seed capital funding.
we still have 2 ambulances that are demos that are on hold, but very brief leash.
Temporarily,
So we
right.
need to pull the trigger.
Yeah, the next, so you have 2 items on this. You have the budget adjustment, and then you have the ambulance bid. So the ambulances that are in the next item, they have a February and a March delivery date. And so they are identical units. So we'd have somewhat of consistency in the fleet. They are on Chevy platforms, which, you know, is beneficial for the Vehicle Service Center since, you know, we've been working to transition the fleet to Chevy since we have that, but I don't want to waste time. And, you know, if you don't like the budget amendment, you're not going to need to hear a lot about that, but that is planned there. And like I said, part of that is that $1 million includes $690,000 for new and used ambulances. That would be two new ambulances and 1 used ambulance. And then $310,000 for other equipment, which includes the electric autoloader, cardiac monitors, and other associated equipment for 3 ambulances. I will say that we'll put all new equipment in the 2 new ambulances and refurbished or used in the used truck, because we would want to keep a rotation schedule in place. You know, we need 3 trucks to have 1 for a maintenance spare or for emergency events, kind of like what happened today, but it doesn't need to be I don't need 3 new ones, and we don't want to be spending $1 million every 7 years. So we generally try to spread that out so that the taxpayers that are getting the current benefit of it
Right.
pay for their share. But that's the summary of kind of where we're at on that and what this budget adjustment does. Questions?
No, thank you for all your hard work on
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
You need to take a vacation here after May 14th or whatever it is.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion on it, and it's been it's been something that we've really had to,
It'll be a transition, that once we get this part, I mean, we're all in it together, whichever way we go, and we're gonna work, to make it easy. And I think, we've answered a bunch of questions for some of the existing staff, and I mean, we're gonna treat everybody as right as we can, which is how we do.
absolutely. If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to introduce on first reading O-002-23, amending the fiscal year 2023 budget to account for city operation of emergency medical services.
Second.
All in favor? And it passes. And item 14, consider and take appropriate action to authorize the purchase of 2-wheeled coach Type 1 ambulances to Sidon Martin Emergency Group LLC in the amount of $565,060 using HGAC Cooperative Purchase Contract Number AM10-20. Mr. Spradlin.
So Mike and Jamie, of course, have been, working really hard down at the fire station, and it's about like a fireman not to be here when I'm gonna pat him on the back, so, But they've been working with Sid Martin's. Sid Martin's is a third-party dealer of a lot of emergency equipment, including fire engines and ambulances. They have been aware of Sid Martin's because we're working with them to possibly take over our maintenance contracts on our fire apparatus. They have a maintenance facility in Lubbock. They have several in the state, but so that's kind of how. And of course, they've been contacting pretty much everybody they can. Luckily for us, Sid Martin's had 2 demo units. So these are ambulances that were spec'd with no end user identified at the time they were ordered. So they're new. They're just not completely custom to our every spec, but they're nice. So they are on a Chevy 5500 chassis, which is a big 4-ton chassis, or 3-ton. I'm a lot better with my Ford F numbers than I am my Chevy, which is funny since, we're trying to, get everything to Chevy. But like I said, Chevy GM, we have a dealer here, so we get some of that. But they do have one should be able to be on site by the end of February, and the other one by the end of March, so it fits the time frame that we're at. They are both identical units, which would, like I said, give us the consistency with that. They're pretty big units. They're pretty nice. But going through Sid and Martin's and the HEACC contract, they'd be maintaining it, and we'd have that link as well to help Wes and the service center with any of our needs. It's the only 2 that we could find that were alike out there. We found ambulances anywhere from, on the low end, 260 to the high end of 351. So, and back when I was on the ambulance, I knew Braun was the Cadillac, but I didn't realize they were that proud of them. So the Braun F450 Chief XL was $351,000. So these are $282,000 a piece, which was in what we found of the last ambulance Panhandle bought was $245,000 3 years ago. So we're in the markup range. So.
Anyone have any questions?
No.
And I guess we can say the reason that we're going ahead with this is because,
They have agreed to hold these 2 units till today.
okay.
So if we, if they would release them, or if we delay, they're going to get.
Right.
We're not the only person. that's going, you know, we probably need them for a better reason than some people to get in a bind, but
Okay, any
I'm
other
good.
questions or comments?
I'm
Then
good,
I'll
Lee.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to authorize the purchase of 2 wheel coach Type 1 ambulances from Siddons Martin Emergency Group LLC in the amount of $565,060 using HDAC Cooperative Purchase Contract Number AM 10-20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And it passes.
After taxes.
And item
luckily we're
15,
tax exempt.
consider and take appropriate action to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Anyone second? And all in favor?
Aye.
And we appreciate everyone that came today. Thank you.